You don't spend a lot of time in, like, Shanghai or the Himalayas. You're kind of like, those are very linear. But then you get to Sukhothai, and then you're in a riverboat, and you're going to these ancient ruins again, and you're discovering a lot of secrets. I decided that this time I was going to go more the wizard path. I was going to try out all the interesting spells, and I think that that's probably a good call. I talked about how it's real easy to sneak up on people and nobody else notices in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This one, I swear that if you knock somebody out, everybody in town knows. Like, it's like... Alex, I can see you again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's annoying. I can also see myself. This is also bad. But hey, we're out of Anemoiapolis, so long enough to do an actual show with our faces, so that's something.
You actually made it to the surface?
No. I think we found out that no, I did not. You want to find out how that all ended? Feel free to watch our Anemoiapolis trilogy as we went through that game. Very interesting, though, and something fun that we might be trying with other games in the future. But right now, we are on a very more standard episode of Total Pebble Knockdown. I am Nathan.
And I am still Alex.
Yep, we have not changed our names, our profile pics, or our setting since the last time you saw us in person. But today on the show, I was actually going to talk to you about 3 games that I had played, recent releases, that I was playing in the meantime while we were also playing Anemoiapolis. And they're very, very different. So I was going to tell you a little bit about those, and tell you what I think about them, and get your impression about how I've either sold you or unsold you on them. So
Unsold and unalived.
First up on the chopping block is going to be the, I guess technically the oldest. It came out at the end of 2024. It is one of those games that I was trying to get around to actually playing in earnest. And I never did, because the end of the year is always such a madcap of things that are in your library. But it's Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which is a game from Machine Games. And if you're not familiar with Machine Games, they're probably best known for the new Wolfenstein series. So New Order and New Colossus, Youngblood, etc. like that. They're fairly well known for that. They are also owned by Bethesda. They're one of Bethesda's in-house development houses now. It did get me very interested in the project. When they first announced it, though, I was like, alright, sure, an Indiana Jones game. We haven't had one of those for a while. It looks fine. It's in first person for the majority of it. Sure, it looks fine. I don't know if anyone really asked for it, but
Probably not.
But we're gonna get it anyway. And I think there was a collective shrug when it was originally announced. But you know what? I have this thing about games with low expectations usually are the ones that end up having the best, overall reaction from folks when it actually gets released. Because I remember this from like Hi-Fi Rush. There was literally no information about it until the day it dropped.
Well, yeah,
and then everybody
dropped it.
Yeah, they shadow dropped it, and it was like Tango's best thing. It's like,
and then they shut the studio down.
Congratulations, Tango Gameworks. Also a Bethesda property, by the way. But Machine Games, I've always been impressed with their work. They usually do a very good job. Smooth combat, action, set pieces, storylines, they're solid as far as game studio goes. So the game gets released at the end of 2024, and immediately everyone plays it and goes, oh, well, this is terrific. And I thought to myself, oh, maybe it's one of those surprise hits. I remember I talked to you about, like, when I got to play just the opening before I had to go and do other things, and that it just looks so good when you go into the jungles there. I guess the good news is the rest of the game also looks that good. Like, the environments and the settings are really nice. It's one of the highlights. You go to the Vatican, and you get to, like, climb around the Vatican. You get to go to Giza and, raid the pyramids, because of course.
This one does.
Yeah. And then you go to, I'm not going to remember the name, Sukhothai, where you're going to these ancient, like buildings and structures that were from previous civilizations before. And the entire time you're doing this is obviously like set in like the World War II era, or shortly before like World War II. So the majority of what you're doing is you're dealing with the fascists in Italy when you go to like the Vatican, and that they're starting to come into play, and then you're dealing with like the Nazis in Giza, and then you're also dealing with some of the Japanese when you go to like Shanghai and those areas. But the majority of the story is basically about, in very traditional Indiana Jones fashion,
these Nazis.
Yeah, these folks want to get this ancient, powerful thing, and we have to stop them from doing the thing. It's a very
politically accurate for the times.
Yes, very politically accurate for the times. It's it sets up like your traditional villain character for Voss, and he's good for that. It sets up ancient orders and these mystical things that are going on, and this idea of the Great Circle, which is basically all of these different places, like essentially like Stonehenge, all of these like places, these centers of worship, ceremonial worship, that in the lore of this game create a giant circle around the world.
Sure.
You meet your scrappy heroine character in Gina in this particular one. A lot of the story beats, if you're familiar with Indiana Jones at all, the story and the setting and everything, very much Indiana Jones. Very much Indiana Jones. I think what I got trepidatious about when I played the opening segment was that it felt very linear. That is not the case for the rest of the game, though. It actually becomes much more large, open space areas where you're doing several missions, sub-missions, quests, adventures, puzzles, things like that. And there's 3 main areas, and then there's a couple smaller places that you go to along the way. You don't spend a lot of time in like Shanghai or the Himalayas. You're kind of like, those are very linear. But then you get to Sukhothai, and then you're in a riverboat, and you're going to these ancient ruins again, and you're discovering a lot of secrets. A lot of puzzles, not a ton of real difficult ones. Some that are very annoying. I hate cog puzzles, I can tell you that.
What?
Sorry. Here's the thing. I got to a cog puzzle, and this is basically like, here's a bunch of cogs on a wall. And this gear turns, and you need to make this other gear on another part of the thing turn. And you have this many gears to work with. And I'm trying all these different things to try and make these gears work, even though they look like they should connect. They're not actually connecting, because they're on an angle. And I'm like, what is going on? Eventually, I look something up, and I find out, oh, here's the context I wasn't getting from the little statues outside that had a list of cogs. I need to find more small cogs in order for this to work. And they're not at this location. There are other cog puzzles, and you have to collect enough of them so that you can do the cog puzzle. So I don't... sometimes they do things like that, and you're like, I don't know why we did that, but here we are.
It's kind of weird.
It is kind of weird. They also have something interesting where, you have your traditional outfit, but you also get disguises. when you...
fun.
Yes, so you get to disguise yourself, and, like, commanders and those kinds of things might still find you suspicious, but you can usually walk through what were previously restricted areas. If you're dressed like a priest or a black shirt or something like that, you can get into certain areas. And then you get melee weapons. I should have actually said this, that the main combat mechanic is usually like fisticuffs. You get some guns, but honestly, most of the time the guns feel like they're less effective than melee weapons, where you can smack people. But there's a big, heavy emphasis on getting these melee weapons that are breakable. You only have so much endurance before they break on you. Finding them in the environment, and then either directly confronting enemies with them, or trying to sneak up behind them and take them out, stealth style. It's very fun. It's not very difficult, for the most part. And I will say, the enemies are very stupid.
Well, it's Indiana Jones. What do you expect?
I do understand you're the big damn hero, so there's obviously going to be that, but when I say the enemies are very stupid, I can sneak up on an enemy that's, like, here. There's another enemy that's, like, turned in the other direction, probably 20 feet away. If I stealth kill this guy with a sledgehammer, the other enemy does not react at all to that. Like,
yeah, that's a bit aggressive to not react to.
Yeah, it's like, sometimes I would go through camps without any disguise, and as long as I'm, like, crouched and I just keep moving, no one usually gets alerted to me, because I can kind of just keep wandering through. I went to, like, excavation sites, and there'd be people, like, walking across bridges and everything like that, and I just went down into the pit a bit, and even if they're walking past, apparently me being down in this pit is enough that they don't even recognize you in, like, the eyesight line. So it became really easy to, like, sneak around, which I understand. I have a feeling that machine games, maybe it's just because I was playing on regular settings, maybe there's more difficult ones where they're more sensitive, but I do imagine that Machine Games was thinking to themselves that it would be really good if those constant alerts from the enemies didn't bog down the exploration, because they did create big areas that were explorable, that you'd want to revisit when you get new tools and abilities. There's even a whole thing where you can revisit previous areas when you get tools, like a rebreather or a lighter, so that you can access areas in previous places to do things. So there's a little kind of Metroidvania-esque element to that. You get to use the whip. You get the whip. You
Not
can
an Indiana Jones game if you don't get to whip somebody.
No, you get to whip around branches so that you can use it to swing from platform to platform, very Pitfall style. You also can use it to open up crates and pull lines, and you can also use it to smack weapons out of enemies' hands. So you get some fun things there. He also has a revolver. So a very, very traditional, Indiana Jones standoff situation. Just whip out your revolver, boom. I think one of the biggest complaints that I really had is that while it's fairly smooth, the control scheme never felt great. Like when I want to access something, even after, like, playing for 25 hours or so, I was still like, wait, how do I do this particular thing? Where they're like, what do you mean in my inventory? It's all, like, mapped to the D-pad. I was playing on Xbox.
You're playing on controller.
I was playing on controller, but I don't really see this getting much better on a mouse and keyboard. But it's just, it's awkward. There's certain tools that are on up arrows that you have to press, and then there's other tools like bandages and fruit and stuff that you would eat. You scroll through those by pressing down on your D-pad, but then you use your regular trigger to actually eat them. And again, it's like, why wouldn't I just select it and press X or something as a use button? I don't have to hold it in my hand and then say I want to eat the thing. Because if it's just on the ground and I want to eat it, it would just give me a context button to do so. So you'd normally think that that would also be what you would do to access them or use them. It's stuff like that, where sometimes if I'm like opening a map and I have a weapon in my hand, I can open the map and the weapon's still in my hand afterward. If I climb a ladder, the weapon falls out of my hand and stays on the ground, and when I get to the top of the ladder, I don't have my melee weapon anymore. Because I can't keep them in my inventory. So, some weird things like that where you're just kind of like, oh, gosh. But they're minor annoyances. I will give them this. They're minor annoyances. The overall game works really well and has a lot of content. And I think people would get... If they like action-adventure games that are single-player, I think you'd enjoy it quite a bit. You also pick up skill books that you can unlock with adventure points. That's kind of your upgrade system in the game. But it's mostly for specific things, like being able to punch for more damage, or being able to put people in grab holds, or things like that. But generally, spoiler alert, really out of the 3 games I'm talking about, I probably played this for a lot longer and probably got more out of it. Overall. Is this the kind of game that you normally like the action-adventure first-person game?
I do, and I'm coming to realize this more lately.
Yeah.
That just looking back, a lot of games I do play are action-adventure type games, which is fine. I do enjoy them.
Yeah.
I mentioned before I've been playing Valhalla again.
Yeah.
Started a new save. I've got more than 20 hours into it already, and I'm just enjoying it. You know, it's just, it's fun. It's not necessarily like it's hard.
Valhalla,
it's not an insanely hard game or anything like that.
No.
Even if you wanted to turn difficulty up, I'm sure it would just be patience. But like,
sure,
it scratches a bunch of itches that I have for exploration and then upgrades and some other stuff. So
yeah,
combat that's not like Dark Souls, you know.
Yeah, exactly. No, Valhalla is. I played it for quite a bit of time, but I did not do nearly as much in that as I did with Origins or Odyssey. That came right before it.
I didn't really play much of either of those.
Okay.
Played a bit. But...
Yeah. I think I don't know if I like the setting more, but I thought Origins was a really nice departure from what they had done previously. And Odyssey is really, I just kind of like being in Greece. That was kind of like, it was a neat setting. I can't say that I spent much time in Mirage. I tried it, and I was like...
I'm not really a huge Assassin's Creed person, but I do have Odyssey Origins, and... Do I have Origins? I do. And Valhalla now.
Yeah.
But like...
Those are the new
I haven't put a ton of hours into all of them. But I do, in general, like the action-adventure... format. I will eventually try Shadows. I've heard some people liked it.
Some people were not as big on it. I think just because it's the formula. But I can boast that I think I've played every mainline Assassin's Creed game. And so I'm kind of obligated at this point to try at least every single one from here on out. For the rest,
I don't think you're obligated to at all.
Of time, I'm going to have to see if they're any good.
I made a comment about this earlier to somebody at work today.
Yeah.
Which was, it's kind of like buying Black Ops, the next Black Ops game, just because you've bought all the other Black Ops games and you kind of feel like you have to.
Yeah. See, for me, Call of Duty is very different because I can never remember one from the other. I think I've played a few of them, and they all feel very samey to me.
I've never played any of them.
Yeah. I am doing single-player missions, so I don't know if the multiplayer has any different, context to it that I'm not familiar with, but in the single players, I might be able to remember a moment or two, but then I'm like, I don't know what that's from. I think the only things I actually remember specifically were from the original Call of Duty, from way back when, because I remember it was very difficult. And if you pop your head out from those ruins, you are gonna get shot from a sniper 1,000 yards away, and there's no coming back from that. And then over the course of time, it became more of like an action, adventure movie kind of thing, where they make it a cinematic experience. So Indiana Jones has a little bit of that going on for it, but it does focus a lot more on like the exploration and stealth and trying to like sneak around and find hidden secrets and artifacts and stuff, and I think does a good job of giving you the spirit of that series in those like old adventure kind of like novels and stories. So it does a good job with that. So moving on to something a bit different, something completely different actually, is Avowed, which came out just a couple months ago. Now, Alex...
That's Obsidian, correct?
That is Obsidian, yes. Another one of those game studios that I find very interesting, currently under Microsoft right now. But I think Obsidian is probably best known for, like, New Vegas. They made Knights of the Old Republic 2. They also, of course, made like Outer Worlds, Grounded, and all of those games as well. So, pretty solid studio, has a pretty good track record. You told me before this that you were kind of not sold on Avowed at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see if I turn that around. I'm not sure if I will, honestly. But Avowed takes place in the same world as Pillars of Eternity. It's actually technically the third game in the series, but instead of doing a party-based game like the Pillars of Eternity ones, you're in first person and you create your own character. And then you go on a rollicking adventure. And the thing about it is, some people, before it was released, talked about Avowed as if it were going to be Obsidian's version of Skyrim.
Kind of looked like it was supposed to be.
Right. And I get that. It is a first-person fantasy open world. I get that. I don't really think it's that. I think, if anything, you would say that this is closer to another game that they made, which was Outer Worlds. I think that it's much closer to Outer Worlds. If you just changed out the setting from like a sci-fi one to a high fantasy setting, you'd be kind of in the realm of what they were going for.
That's kind of what I heard about it.
Tonally, it's much more serious than Outer Worlds, because Outer Worlds was indeed very comical and kind of tongue-in-cheek and satirical. This one is not big on that. It is much more of like your standard fantasy world setting, where you are essentially like some sort of almost celestial creature. You've been touched by the gods.
Angel?
You've been touched by an angel, yeah. Roma Downey's gonna come down and gave you these mushrooms on your head. And you're going on your epic quest to kind of figure out why there's this corruption going off across the living lands, which is the world that they thrust you into. You get to make your own character out of the gate. You have a few different species that you have available to you. A lot of different character options, and then you're kind of off to the races. In fact, I would say that they don't really do much at the beginning to point you in the direction of a character class. The whole idea is that you kind of learn, and I guess this is sort of like Skyrim in terms of like character development. You don't have a character class. You then can decide if you want to try to do essentially wizard kind of things with magic and spells, if you want to do ranger kind of stealthy melee backstabbing long range combat, or if you want to do a warrior style more straight up melee kind of combat. You have those options available to you. I decided that this time I was going to go more the wizard path. I was going to try out all the interesting spells, and I think that that's probably a good call, just because I feel like I might have been bored with some of the other styles. You have a lot more options with the wizard spells. They do take a lot of energy in order to pull off. I kept finding that, like, essentially my mana pool, it's not called a mana pool, but essentially your mana pool decreases and doesn't really regenerate. So you have to have potions or food that can actually regenerate your essence, is what it's called. If you don't have that, you're kind of out of luck for spells.
Does Melee have anything like this?
Melee, you do have stamina. So sure. you would run out of stamina, and then that would come back. So
on its own?
It will regenerate on its own if you're not currently doing an active attack. Sort of Dark Soulsy in that way. You know, like how you do attacks and then you have to wait for it to regenerate.
Yeah, no, I get that. See, the problem I always have with games that have stamina system or just melee combat or ranged combat and a system like that where stamina regenerates, you can kind of attack with your weapons infinitely.
Yeah.
But then they also have a mana system. The same issue I have with like D&D with the spells per day system is that creating a system where you have a finite resource that doesn't regenerate on its own means that you're going to favor the ability to not have to like waste money on potions or create potions to get your mana back or get food to get your mana back or whatever. Whereas just melee attacking, you can just wait a second, get your stamina back real quick.
Right. You're going to favor the one that is a replenishing resource rather than the one that is not. And so I think the way they try to get around this is that if you're a wizardy person, you can get wands. And wands will actually work on a stamina system for basic attacks. So, like, you can sling some bolts out of your wand, and that will work on a stamina system rather than on your mana, rather than your essence. But a lot of times, it's not a particularly strong weapon. So what you're going to want to do is try and put spells in as often as you can. The spells also have cooldowns, so and they get pretty expensive at later levels.
Are they powerful?
Yeah, they can be very powerful if you can pull them off effectively. One of the ways that they try to augment this too, if you're really just going straight on spellcaster, is that you have spell books that you can keep in your opposite hand. And if you do that, they reduce down spell cost, but then they also give you access to some spells that you might not have points in. They do something kind of interesting too in that regard, where there's a whole bunch of spells that are like locked off to you, but if you found a spell book that has it, it becomes unlocked for you to take. And then if you're holding a spell book that has the same spell and you've unlocked it, it actually casts it at a level higher. So there are some real advantages to that. But if you didn't want to just be a spellcaster, if you found a really sweet sword or an axe or something and it has some good properties, you could technically keep your axe in your primary hand for melee combat, keep a spellbook in your secondary hand so that you could still do spells with that. But then you'd have to be somewhat capable with melee weapons for your upgrade system as you're going through it. And you really only get like the one skill point every level. And I don't know what the level cap is on Avowed, but I have heard a lot of people, I think, I want to say it was like Mortismal, that was talking about how if you max out your character's level, you wouldn't be able to take all the skill points in just one of those skill trees. Which I totally understand, because there's multiple levels of multiple spells on like 5 or 6 different like levels that you would go down. So you would have to have like a level cap of like over 50 to be able to max out just one of those. And then that would be it. If you were going straight up as one of these kinds of characters. In very similar fashion to other games that Obsidian has made, you really only have 2 of those characters that can be out with you at a time. That's your limitation. Not that there are all that many companion characters anyway, but you do have to limit yourself to 2. I didn't find them particularly useful in combat. They're mostly just there to kind of like keep the myriad of enemies away from you, so that I can kind of get spells off. Unfortunately, I didn't find like Marius and Kai they're not one-shotting other enemies for you. They're just kind of keeping them at bay for the majority of the time. One weird system that I wanted to talk to you about was the revival system, or like a second wind. It is called second wind. So if I go out into combat and I lose all my health, it basically throws me into this mode that's like a second wind system, where things kind of go all gray, and then circle will close in and you can revitalize with like half your health or something like that and get back in the fight. However, after doing that the one time, if you get hit and killed, there's no revitalization, and it doesn't seem to matter how long you've gone without it, until I think you rest at an actual campsite, and then you get it back. But that was one of those things where it's like an interesting idea, but I don't really see the usefulness of it, because I could not tell if I had that as an active equipped ability, or if it was no longer on. So you'd get into a combat scenario and get whipped off of the playing field by one of these little lizard creatures, and I'd be like, oh, I guess I didn't have second wind available at that point. Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, coming from like Borderlands, that has a much richer second wind system that's like built into the overall combat. I was like, that's feels like an afterthought. That one feels like a big afterthought. I can't cite them for the landscape, though. The landscape looks great. It's pretty explorable. You might not be able to get up onto every cliff face and everything like that, because there are obviously like paths you can take to get up to higher areas and down into, the waters and, tunnels and stuff like that. But it's pretty open, pretty explorable. If you see something really cool off in the distance, chances are you can go to it. So I did like that. You enter into new areas that have not really leveled characters. They don't really do levels for enemies in the game or even your weaponry. They do tiers. So you have like common tiers and then second tier, third tier, fourth tier, and there's star ratings for each one of them. I felt that was unnecessary. Levels would have been much simpler to understand. I don't need to find out it's like, oh, it's 5th tier, but third star in 5th tier. It's like, I feel like you could have just told me that's level 18. I'm pretty sure I could have figured that out. I really wish that you had just done that. But anyway, there's some interesting things like that, and I feel like, though, the majority of it is like Obsidian trying to put their own mark on the mechanics of fantasy gaming. Like, they didn't just want to do what everybody else did. They wanted to try something new and try a different kind of system and make these unique in some way, about like, what are the species that are here? What are the landscapes that are here? I don't just want to do this leveling system. We're going to do something a little creative with it, and we're going to do these tier rankings, and now we're going to do rarities.
I get it. I do get it, but at the same time, there are reasons that we use the things we use and have not changed the way we do them a lot of times too.
Sometimes when a system ain't broke, you don't fix it. It's that whole thing. And if it's going to make it more confusing to understand what's going on, I'm not really on board for it. And it does have elements of that.
I mean, for me, I would have made a simple fix to the magic system, being that mana doesn't regen on its own. One of the spells you get at base level is just a spell to gather mana.
Yeah.
Like a channeled spell that you just gather mana back. Mm-hmm. And it's like you have to take the time to do it.
Yeah.
Which means you're going to have to be fighting and defensive and whatnot while you do it. Maybe you can do it while you have a sword in your hand too, but like, just give you a spell to channel mana.
Sure.
Or to gather mana. And it's like, oh, look, I didn't have to buy a potion. You're not breaking the flow of combat, and suddenly you've got mana back.
Yeah. There's a spell that you can get early on if you're going down the wizard path, which is like an arcane staff of some sort. And what it does is it says you can summon the staff to your hand, and when you hit enemies, you regain a little bit of your essence by doing so. The problem with that is that I now have to change my entire playstyle to become a melee combatant with a two-handed weapon.
Would have just been easier to give you a spell to channel essence.
Can I channel that, or can I channel it out of combat or something like that? Or, you know,
or drain it from enemies?
Could I drain it from enemies? Could I drain it from the land itself? Like, if you have, like, a natural essence and you find places of essence or something like that. Because there are, like, standing stones and, like, essence. Can I go to those places, and could I drain them? Like, those are replenishing pools. Like when you go to like if you have thirst meters and you go to a water source and you can replenish it there, even if it comes back to you. Could you do that with essence? That would have been really cool. That would have been really cool.
I mean, that's the whole, I think we've talked about it before, but like I had a system I wanted to make for mana in D&D, because spells per day I don't like, but being able to, like, all right, well, I'm gonna regen mana as a mechanic, you know, give spells a cost in mana and then a way to regen mana or gain mana, and you go, now I've got a replenishing resource that I can spend to do these things.
Sure. I think, like, the simple idea of, like, if I took spell slots and I said that, like, instead of first tier spells, that equates to like 1 mana, and 2 mana, 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana, and then it costs that much, and then I can just then I know that I can either cast like a second tier spell, or I could cast a first tier spell twice with the same mana cost, and then I just have that pool. That would be a real easy way to, so that I'm not like, oh, it's my only 3rd level spell. No, I could actually do like 3 level spells and call it good. The thing is, like, the Avowed system actually has something like that because of the essence pools. So, like, it's 25 essence for, like, 1st level spells, 50 for the 2nd, 75 for 3rd, and then if you have spell books or other, you know, variations herein, you can mitigate that cost by a certain percentage, upgrade your spell books, then you can get, like, 40% off your spells or whatever for the cost. So I could do really light spells and do them a lot, or I could do really heavy spells, fireballs, lightning storms that hit multiple enemies. I could do those things, but I can't do them very much. And so I was trying to focus on, like, equipment and abilities that would increase my essence and decrease my, spell times and my spell costs. And I still ran out quite a bit. And then had to spend a lot of time, go to your menu, and eat a bunch of stuff that replenishes your essence, or chug some essence potions, and then get back in the game. Oh, you have so many of these fruit, and they restore like 5 essence each. Well, that's great. I need like 20 so that I can cast this one 1st level spell right now. So that 100 things that I have of fruit go down real quick, and I found myself running out of that too. Enemies hit pretty hard too, and dodging is tricky. Like, you'll come across, like, bears. You know your relationship with bears. My relationship with bears in Avowed was bad, because they'll run at you, and they'll swipe, and even if you dodge, they then come to you again, and they immediately like go to swipe again and again, like they have a multi-tier attack. Dodging or anything like that is going to also cost you stamina, so you can run out of stamina pretty quick just trying to dodge out from the bears. And if you're a wizard, you're kind of squishy. You're not taking on heavy armor or shields or anything like that. So, but in general, I mean, it looks good and it plays fine. There's nothing really wrong with that. It didn't necessarily stand out in the way that compelled you going forward with it. In a way that like a lot of other Obsidian titles have, where it really seems to like lead you into its world and then keep you there, where you're like, oh, I need to find out more about this. It's not like the intrigue that you get from like New Vegas, where you go out into Goodsprings and it's like, oh, I gotta figure out what the hell's going on here. What's that? Avowed really doesn't accomplish that. Even Outer Worlds, where you like land on that first planet and there's facilities off in the distance and there's this ship that you know that you have to get up and operational, and there's raiders after you. Avowed doesn't really do that. It kind of leads you to this world and says there's a corruption going on and you're some kind of like semi-mystical being. That would be kind of neat to find out about. Bet the villagers have something for you. Why don't you go talk to them? Yeah, kill them all. I don't think you can. I expect to be able to kill everybody in an Obsidian game. That's my favorite thing about them. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sell you on Avowed. I
don't think so.
Only because I still don't know if I'm sold on Avowed. I've played it for quite a few hours. I've gotten to like the second area, and I just haven't really picked it up recently. And I think the reason is because I'm like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. Like, I didn't feel motivated to do more in the game. Looks great, sounds great, great voice acting. The guy who plays Kai is the same voice actor that played Garrus in Mass Effect. And it's awesome. It's terrific. The characters, they're lively, some really fun landscapes. The aesthetics of it are great. But I wasn't really sold. I don't really care. They didn't make me care about what's going on with the Living Lands, and that's unfortunate. My third game, though, I don't know what really to say about Atomfall. It's probably the one I've played the least amount, and the most recently. And this is coming from Rebellion. And Rebellion's a very interesting company, too, and they usually have a pretty good track record. They're the ones that created the Sniper Elite series. And those are actually very good.
I've never played a Sniper Elite game.
The one, I have not tried 5 yet, but I have played through 4. And the thing that I really like about the Sniper Elite series is that it's like these big open world maps that you get to go through, almost Hitman style, where, you get to like find secrets and stuff. But then the majority of it is really just trying to like do stealth, sneak up on enemies, and then try to get good long-term shots that are disguised so that you don't get found out. And I was like, there's some real... And then you get the kill cams, which are amazing. The X-ray cams that go through, where you get bonus points for.
It's the only thing I know about Sniper Elite is that...
Yeah. But it I'll tell you, there's something incredibly satisfying about Sniper Elite. When you find a position, and they're like, the two Nazis are like walking by each other, and you get a shot... And it does a double headshot, and you see the X-ray come through, and you see it like go through the eye and stuff. But there's also this wonderful moment, because I'm talking about Sniper Elite for a moment, where you can turn on like generators to mask your sound, or you have lightning come down that hits, and if you time it correctly, and you time your shot to like the lightning hit, no one hears the sound or the flash. and you get away, and it's like, those are such cool mechanics in those games. Really, really fun. This is not that. Now let me tell you that Atomfall is not that.
I didn't think it was. It's a very different type of game.
It's a very different type of game. What they did with Atomfall was, this is kind of Rebellion's... I've heard a lot of people say that it's Rebellion doing Fallout. And again, I don't know if that's an accurate description. It actually feels like Rebellion doing Shadow of Chernobyl. It feels much more like... it feels more like that. And I can tell you that out of the gate, it definitely feels more polished than Shadow of Chernobyl 2 was when it came out. Having played it recently, I hear it's gotten much better, but it's definitely more polished than that. But at the same time, I don't know if it's necessarily as interesting. There's some science fiction-y, post-apocalyptic stuff going on with Atomfall. And
as there is.
As you do. You got to. It's set in London. Or not London, but England, mostly the English countryside, really. So, interesting setting. You've got a variety of weaponry that you can pull out. And it's all kind of like very stock weaponry. Like, you have 1911 handguns, you have, your single-shot shotguns, and, bolt-action rifles and stuff like that. And you're going across this landscape, and there are these gangs and these, like, they call them druids, but they're, vicious people that are out in the woods. There are some crazy monsters that are out there. There are some zombie-like creatures that have, been put in these chrysalises that you go through facilities to find. And that's great. And again, it's interesting because I feel like aesthetics for all of these games, the look and the feel and how they do a really great job with that. And then you get to the gameplay and it gets a little shakier. The look of this game is terrific. I really like it. It feels like an English countryside that has gone through some stuff. Like that's the feeling. So it feels still quintessential, like an area of the world that you could recognize. If you've ever watched literally any dramas from the BBC, like it's gonna look like that. But if it was the post-apocalypse and things have gone badly, and now there's mutated creatures and giant robots that have like the Union Jack on their chest and whatever.
Great, perfect.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. Every character that's in it is very British, so that's fun. But I don't know if I really can call it like a Fallout. It doesn't really play that way, and the structures are very different. The first one is, if you play a Fallout game, you usually have this one big overarching map, and then there's a little smaller areas that are inside of it. This one really favors smaller area maps that you move between to different spaces, and then also you get tunnels and bunkers and things like that you get to go through. The bunkers you can kind of think of as vaults, like Vault-Tec vaults, but I cannot tell you that they have like the integral stories of vaults, like in that. There is what's the company? I feel like it's supposed to be their version of Vault-Tec, but it's not Vault-Tec, and you find chests of their supplies and stuff like that. So there's stuff that's in there for that. I think the biggest hang-up is that it doesn't play like an RPG. It really does play more like an action-adventure game. So if people were coming into this thinking like it's going to be, it's like a Fallout RPG. No, it's not. Again, much more like a Shadow of Chernobyl. It's supposed to be a first-person shooter, exploration, open-world thing, but with the caveat that if people shoot you, you're probably going to die pretty quickly.
Great.
You don't have a traditional upgrade system. Like, you don't gain experience in this. What you do is you get training stims by exploration. And when you get the training stims, you can afford specific upgrades to your health, to be able to disarm traps, to ready arrows faster, or to do stealth kills easier, stuff like that. You also have to unlock those by buying or finding skill books to get those different topics of, like, archery or gunsmithing or stuff like that. So, very different kind of upgrade system. That's pretty much it. It doesn't matter if you kill, like, 20 soldiers in this world. You really don't gain anything except what you can loot off their corpse. And then we get to the inventory. So, in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, basically, if anything is relevant for your inventory, it goes into your inventory and then you can get it later. But you can't keep melee weapons or guns if they're not part of your regular repertoire. In Avowed, they have a weight system. And you can get encumbered, and if you get encumbered, you can't run or anything, so you're walking real slow back to town. But everything just has a weight. In Atomfall, they have certain slots. There's not many of them, but you have, like, I want to say it's 15. No, I think it's actually 12. You have, like, these 12 slots. If I have one grenade, that takes up a slot. If I get 2 grenades, that's 2 slots. So that's pretty much all I have. I also have 4 large slots. So if you pick up a rifle or a shotgun, those go in large slots, but at most, I can have 4 large weapons. And then I have, like, these smaller spaces. If I've used all of those up, I can't carry anymore. So if you go to a camp and they're druids and they all have bows, the most you could possibly pick up is 4 bows. That's it. You can't pick up any more. This actually gets to a really interesting thing. This is actually one of the most interesting systems I found in the game, is the bartering system. Nothing, as far as you know, has a set value. Nothing has money equated to it. You do not trade in money. What you do is you have to go to somebody and they have objects you want. They like, oh, here's a skill book and here's a key to a bunker. I haven't been there before. I want those. Okay, put them in their barter column. Now you gotta find out what you have to give them from your side so that it's not weighted too heavily and they will accept the trade. And some traders like certain items more than others. So you might have better luck giving them a grenade or a handgun or food or something like that. And it will be better for them. But you have to figure out what the weighting of the trade is. It's like Merchant of the Seven Kingdoms at that point. It's like a whole other thing. But I was like, okay, I get that. But if we're gonna do that kind of a bartering system, I really wish I could hold more stuff to go and do the bartering with, because I am kind of limited by the number of storage spaces that I have to go there with. And you do get like a pneumatic tube system and everything so that you can store stuff, but I then have to go to the pneumatic tube, grab everything I want to sell, and then try to wait my trades later. It's more busy work than you really needed it to be.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't sound ergonomical.
It's not. There's the whole thing about like quality of life, and Atomfall kind of says, nah, don't worry about it. It's fine.
It said fuck your quality of life.
Fuck your quality of life. You don't really need it. A lot of the guns you get at the beginning are very much like single shot weapons, except for like the handguns, and they take a long time to reload. You can get better at that over the course of time. But when you have these enemies like these undead that like have breath weapons and stuff like that can take you out in just a few hits, you really have to be focused on like how you're reloading and how you're moving through this world. I think the idea that Atomfall, if I were to venture a guess, I think Atomfall wanted you to really think critically about every situation and realize you cannot just jump in and start blowing people away, because that's going to be a real easy way for you to die very quickly. If you take somebody, I talked about how it's real easy to sneak up on people and nobody else notices in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This one, I swear that if you knock somebody out, everybody in town knows. Like, it's like you have to make sure that like nobody is anywhere in eyesight of you when you do that. I once had a conflict where there was a few characters that were harassing one of the ladies in town, and I was like, ooh, maybe I can take them out. And I get behind one of them, and I do a stealth move, and I take them out. The other two immediately start firing on me, and like 5 soldiers down the road come through the thing and start attacking me, and I've got my single shotgun, and I'm like, this is not gonna work. I think I tried the pistol, and it has 6 rounds, and I couldn't get 6 rounds off before. Like, I just absolutely got decimated by it. Washed.
Yeah, I don't like it when guards respond in force like that in games. It's like, if you don't want me to do it, just don't let me do it.
Yeah. Gunfire always seems to be a thing that leads people to you. They do introduce bows, and if you do bows, those are more like a silent weapon. But you gotta know how to do headshots, or otherwise the enemy's gonna start firing, and then everybody else is gonna come running because they hear the gunshots. So you gotta know how to use your weaponry very, very quickly in the game. The environments look fine, but yeah, it's just every time you get into a conflict, you realize the game's probably trying to train you to think very methodically, carefully, and stealthily about combat. One time I went to a cave, and there was like this matriarch that was doing a speech to all of her followers, and you can get up behind her and you can take her out. And I had already taken a lot of other people out, like by hiding around corners essentially and trying to like reload and pick them off as they come around corners. But I go up to her, and there's still some people straggling. And as soon as I do that, I start getting shot from across the room, across the giant pit that they're in. I can't even see the characters. There were a lot of times where it's like I was getting shot, it would show me the directional sign, and it's like, I don't see anybody there. Where are they? I cannot see them. So there are frustrations with Atomfall, and I think the thing is that even my recovery items are also in those basic slots. They also have limitations on the amount of ammunition you can carry for every gun. And also your, like, scrap components so that you can do crafting. But again, crafted items are going to go into your slots for inventory. So chances are you can't make your things if you don't have space. They won't let you do that. It has those limitations. The general concept is really neat. You know, you get to go up to all of these phone booths, and this cryptic guy on the other end is like telling you can't trust anybody. You're like, who is this person? What is happening in these villages? Are these peacekeepers that are there? Are they actually good or bad? They seem kind of thuggish. Following quest lines and leads is not very easy to do, but there are a lot of them.
Right,
but there's
even worse.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Like, here's some leads to follow up in this area, but you don't really get like a map marker for it. You just kind of you can track it, but I can't tell what area it's supposed to be. So again, it's really there to just kind of say, yeah, something weird is happening in a rail yard. There's a secret chest somewhere in the rail yard. Where's the rail yard? figure it out. You're going to see it eventually. So you have to discover these things on your own when it comes to Atomfall. But it's a competent game. I just don't know if the structure works for me. I think it becomes needlessly frustrating when you're trying to redo sections over and over and over again. Just because, like, oh, here's a hive of bees. Okay, I gotta shoot the hive of bees, and then I have to pull out a melee weapon and try to smack away at all the bees, and then try to recover my health in my inventory while the game is still running. Oh, by the way, if your inventory is open, the game is still technically going. The game does not pause. And, like, if this were done almost in the style that they did Sniper Elite, with that kind of framing as a third person, like, these big open worlds where the idea is to, like, use the environment, and you kind of get a layout of the environment and all of that, and you have a certain set of skills and abilities that are available to you, and you can do that. I think it might have worked better. In this particular framework, is like the first person we're kind of trying to do Fallout, but not Fallout. I don't think it works as well. But
yeah.
I give them all credit for being, like, kind of original IPs. I know Indiana Jones is an existing series, but they haven't really done an Indiana Jones game like this. I know that Avowed is in the Pillars of Eternity series, but it's a different kind of game than that. And Atomfall is very much its very own thing. I appreciate that. I'm happy that we're seeing more original stuff. I still have to play South of Midnight, which is also, like, an original IP from Compulsion. But I don't know how much I'm playing of any of them anymore. Avowed and Atomfall, kind of because I sort of know what they're going for, and I don't really care as much about continuing. Indiana Jones, mostly because I've gotten toward the end of the game, and they have introduced a giant snake in the waters outside a pyramid that I now have to go into the water and stealth around. Apparently there's a boss battle later, but you have to stealth through these, like, ruins of the pyramid under the water to avoid the snake eating you, and you have to, like, time your underwater move. And I'm kind of like going, I think I'm good. I think I'm good now. I don't really want to do that part. I might be out at that point. That doesn't sound fun or engaging, and I don't like that.
Get a mod that changes the serpent into a cat.
It's not that. It's mostly that actually all of these games, they don't have underwater combat mechanics.
Oh yeah.
Like, you played Valhalla. All of those games, you can attack underwater. And so it's like, okay, that's fine. But when they don't have attack ability underwater, I don't expect there to be anything in the water that's going to attack me.
Yeah.
I think. So now that they've actually introduced, at the very end of the game, a creature, obviously it's a stealth piece of the game. And it's supposed to be that. But I don't really want to do a stealth section against a giant snake. Not my favorite activity in the world. So, luckily I can go and, tool around with some of the stuff I missed from, like, Giza and the Vatican, but, nah, I don't really see that. I think I've moved on. Now that I've kind of given you a rundown of any of these, is there any one of them that sounds like it might be appealing to you?
Not really, no.
Great. Perfect.
I think I had seen somebody play some of Atomfall, and I was like, not interested.
Yeah. I think it's just...
Avowed.
Yeah. And again, like, the thing about it is that, like, Atomfall... Avowed, I wasn't really sold on the world building. And, not that it doesn't look nice, but I wasn't really sold on the characters. It felt a little flat for me. Atomfall, it wasn't necessarily that it's flat, but I didn't really like the structure of the game. I wasn't really sold on that. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, really excellent game, very engaging. You can play it for a long time and enjoy it. I wasn't really engaged with Giant Snake in the Water. It's pretty much where up until that point, it's got a lot of fun stuff going for it.
Until I had to go against snakes in water.
Yeah. And if they had made some of the controls a little bit more intuitive for me to access pieces in my inventory and move between them, that would have been preferable too. But overall, I can't really fault it. It does things pretty well. So anyway, yeah, those were 3 of the new releases that I played. That I wanted to get around to talking about, and I don't know if anyone else out there has played 1, 2, or 3 of these, and if you had thoughts on them, let us know in the comments down below. Alex, if folks want to find more information about Total Puzzle Knockdown, where could they go?
You can find more information about what we do over here over at TotalPuzzleKnockdown.com.
Yeah, feel free to go over there and check that out. You can find stuff about our Patreon over there as well. We release early episodes over there, as well as giving you some extra stuff that never makes it into the episode, the stuff that we talk about before and during. So you can check that out. And you can also find us on every podcast app known to mankind. Rate and review and subscribe while you are there. If you have been checking out the latest episodes of Anemoiapolis that we played through, those were in video form on Spotify, or Anchor, I should say, as well. So
it's Spotify now.
Oh, that's right.
It's no longer Anchor.
That's right. It's not Anchor. Now it's Spotify. I can't keep up with these changes. But you can check us out there. And of course, feel free to check us out on our Discord. It's Total Puzzle Knockdown. It's free Discord. And we talk a lot about game-specific things, video, analog, everything in between. Check us out over there. And with that being said, thank you for joining us on Total Puzzle Knockdown, and we will see you next time. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
That was a good one. I'm clipping that and saving it.